Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace.
And that was a quote from President Trump's national address earlier this evening following a strike on Iran's nuclear sites by the United States. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Anthony Ramos. The strikes come a week and a half after Israel launched airstrikes on Iran, speaking a volley of missiles between the two countries. President Trump said the U.S. military, quote, completely and totally obliterated Iran's key nuclear sites Saturday night. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has more from Washington.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan.
The United States striking Iran's nuclear facilities, providing offensive assistance for Israel in its war with Iran. President Trump addressing the nation from the White House directly after the strikes.
Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressing gratitude.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history.
The U.S. alone had the 30,000-pound bunker buster needed to destroy Iran's nuclear sites buried deep underground. President Trump didn't mention whether that was used in this attack, but did say that B-2 stealth bombers, which are capable of carrying bunker busters, were involved.
This cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill.
On Friday, Iran's foreign minister warning the U.S. getting involved would be very dangerous for everybody. Now, all eyes are on Iran and how they will respond. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting.
And Israel is closing its airspace to both inbound and outbound flights. Israel hasn't said how long its airspace will be closed. Iran says there are no signs of nuclear contamination at the sites that were targeted. It has been promised to respond to the attacks, but its capabilities have been greatly diminished by Israel's bombing campaigns. And President Trump touts the strike he ordered on Iran's nuclear facilities as an overwhelming success as the U.S. waits for daylight in Iran to fully understand how much it has crippled Iran's nuclear program.
The strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Trump says the strikes have erased a threat to Israel and says there must be peace or there will be tragedy for Iran. He warns there are many targets left if Iran chooses to respond, saying they can be taken out in minutes. If you missed the president's national address, you can watch it in full on our YouTube page at KRNV News 4. And President Trump says Air Force General Dan Kane and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will hold a press conference tomorrow morning at the Pentagon. It's scheduled for 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll, of course, bring you those details, which are expected to include observations from the strikes on Iran's facilities once the sun rises over Iran. And Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders learned of the strikes on Iran while giving his speech on fighting oligarchy tour in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
The only entity that can take this country to war is the U.S. Congress. The president does not have the right.
Sanders calls President Trump's orders grossly unconstitutional. He says that Trump just made another burden that we have to carry. And New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is calling for President Trump's impeachment. She writes on X, quote, "The president's disastrous decision to bomb Iran without authorization is a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers. He has impulsively risked launching a war that may ensnare us for generations. It's absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment." On the flip side, in a post on X, Nevada Governor Joe Lombardo posted in favor with President Trump's decision to strike Iran. He said, quote, "I stand with Israel and appreciate President Trump's thoughtful and timely action to neutralize Iran's nuclear sites." He goes on to say a nuclear Iran would threaten global security and pose a direct threat to both Israel and America. And tonight, the world is watching how other countries and groups respond to the U.S. attacks on Iran. One of the big concerns, the Houthis in Yemen. That's a group the U.S. State Department has declared a terrorist organization. The Houthi are a Shia Muslim group that emerged in the northern part of Yemen in the 1990s. They began a rebellion against the Yemeni government in the early 2000s. In recent years, in 2023, the Houthis started firing attacks on Israel. They were intercepted. Last year, the U.S. and U.K. started carrying out attacks on the Houthi after they sank several ships in the Middle East, seized another, and killed 4 crew members. In March of this year, the U.S. officially declared the Houthis a terrorist organization. And that same month, President Trump authorized a series of military strikes on the Houthis. The two sides reached an agreement where neither would target the other as long as there were no attacks on their groups or countries. The question now is, how will Iran choose to respond? One former U.S. official has a pretty good idea of what to expect.
I would put it in 3 categories. We know them well. Missiles, militias, and terrorism or hostage taking. But I think we have, as I understand it, both sent a warning to Iran not to think about that. And if they do, we would have a counter, trying to avoid going up that ladder.
President Trump has warned Iran not to respond. Iran's supreme leader warned earlier this week that if the U.S. did strike, that it would be bad for the United States without providing specifics. But just earlier today, the Houthis promised to attack U.S. ships in the Middle East if the U.S. entered the conflict between Israel and Iran. Among concerns about any conflict or wars in the Middle East is the effect of oil prices and the stock market here at home. Given that it's Saturday night, we won't have a good idea of the initial effect until Monday morning, but world financial leaders are already weighing in tonight. Reuters reports tonight that Jamie Cox from the Harris Financial Group says this, quote, oil is sure to spike on the initial news, but will likely level in a few days. And this demonstration of force and total annihilation of its nuclear capabilities, they've lost all of their leverage and will likely hit the escape button to a peace deal. And then there's this tonight from Mark Malek, the chief investment officer at Siebert Financial. He says, quote, I think it's going to be very positive for the stock market. So this will be reassuring, especially since it seems like a one and done and the situation, and not as if the U.S. is seeking a long drawn out conflict. The biggest risk still there is the Strait of Hormuz. It could certainly change everything if Iran has the capability to close it. And tonight, for our question of the day, we want to know, do you support the U.S. attacking only nuclear targets in Iran? To cast your vote, you can head over to the homepage of our website. That's mynews4.com. And of course, we'll continue to keep you posted both on air and online as this situation develops.